Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of My 3 Minutes of Fame. And today I'm going to be talking about chapter 6 in our book, which is entitled Site Valuation. And this is for BRE 120, Real Estate Appraisal. So I'm going to be talking about three main points. And the first one is the highest and best use, vacant and improved land, and lastly, the sales comparison approach to valuation. So let's just jump right into it. What highest and best use is defined as the use that is reasonable and probable, and that results in the highest present value as of the date of appraisal. So when I think about highest and best use, I can't help but think about the video or the picture that Professor Regina shared with us during one of our class sessions. And that is there was a house and a shopping mall built around it. So I would say that the highest and best use for that property probably wasn't a single family residence, but the highest and best use would be to sell that land and to tear down the house and then to continue on with the shopping mall. Now, that's just my opinion. And I'm sure that's everybody else's opinion. Why didn't you just sell and get money? But some people are like that. No, this is my house. I'm not going to sell it. You want to build a shopping mall? That's up to you. So, what are the three purposes for the highest and best use? First of all, market value depends on the most profitable use. And again, in that scenario, the single family residence probably wasn't the most profitable use. Number two is constant use requires both land and improvements to be appraised for the same use. So you have to assume that if you're in a neighborhood that's zoned residential and you have land and a home built on that land, you have to assume that you're going to appraise that home because it's because of the continued use of that property. And then lastly, comparable vacant lots and improved property should have the same highest and best use as the subject property. So when you look for comparable sales to determine value, they should have the same highest and best use as the subject property. So you're not going to compare, let's say you're not going to compare a parking structure to a single family residence. They have to have the same highest and best use. Four characteristics of the highest and best use. First of all, it has to be legally permitted for use. In other words, there are legal restrictions that apply. The first ones are governmental, which is in the form of, say, zoning, environmental and tax regulations. And then we have private restrictions such as easements, deed restrictions, and lease conditions. Now, you can't build, let's give the example again, you can't build a shopping mall in an area that's zoned for residential. But if the city changes the zoning laws for that area, then potentially, the that property that you're looking at, the highest and best value, could again be land for that shopping mall. The second thing is it has to be physically possible for use. Now, you're not going to see, and I think that's what keeps cities, in their layout, the integrity of their layout or their plan, is it physically possible to have this type of property where you think where it's gonna be, or for the lot that you're looking at. So if you're looking at a lot, say, I'll just give the example, since I was there in Tennessee, up in the mountains, and you think you're going to put a luxury high rise in the mountains, that may not be possible for use because of the type of soil and because of the topography. Obviously, the shape of the property plays into that, but I mean, in those conditions, I think the soil and the topography would be the greatest challenge. And then next would be, is it economically is the use economically feasible? So it must result in a positive economic return. You're not going to determine a highest and best use for something that is not going to result in a positive return, because we want the highest and best use that's going to bring us the highest and best return. And then lastly, the maximally productive use. And that's the use that results in the highest value. So if the highest value is as land given up for a shopping mall, then that would be the highest. That's how we would judge the highest value. If it is better that you have that you continue with your single family residence, then that would be the highest value because that would be the most productive use. Again, in the hills of, maybe Gatlinburg, Tennessee, the most productive use for the property would be for single family residences. So next, let's talk about vacant land and improved land. So the book gives an example of a property that you would potentially look at to have more value as a vacant piece of property for commercial use. And in the instance of that example, if the land was vacant, um, then maybe it could be used for that shopping mall. But with a house on it, it cannot. So when you look at vacant and improved land, you look, the current use of that land should change when the vacant land value is greater than the improved property value, uh, including or plus the demolition cost. And then the current use should continue when the vacant land value is less than the improved property value plus the demolition cost. So the example in the book is a land is worth $40,000. The improvement is worth $80,000. So altogether, it's worth $120,000. Now, if you were to tear down the home that's on that property and you offer it up for commercial use, the land would then be worth $80,000, but you have to spend $10,000 to remove that single family residence. So the net value would be $70,000. And in this case, the valuation of 120,000 for the single family residence is more than what the vacant land would be worth. So you would keep, again, you would continue when the vacant land value is less than the improved property value plus demolition in this case. Okay, and lastly, I'd like to talk about the sales comparison method for property valuation. Chapter 6 touches on that. We go into more depth into other chapters, but let me just touch on the sales comparison method for valuation. It's considered the most important and reliable approach to land valuation because it relies on actual sales that are similar to the subject property. So we just spent time completing the Fannie Mae 1004 form. And on that form, we give 3 comparable properties and their values. And we look for comparable properties that say are within a half a mile. They have plus or minus 25% as far as square footage of the house, and about the same layout: 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, similar, very similar. And they should be also around the same age. So on my form, I found a property that was built this year, and on the same block that they're starting a new housing tract. So there were more properties that were also built this same year. So it was very easy for me to come up with a comparable sale for the property that I chose because all the properties were same age, around the same size. Now I had 2 that were greater in square footage, same 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but 200 more square feet. So I had to account for that. So the sales comparison method, again, one of the videos that we saw for our last assignment, the subject property doesn't move, but you change the comparable properties and you use see if I can remember, you use the acronym CIA or CBS. If the property is inferior to, then you add. Or the comparison property. If the comparison property is better, then you subtract value. So you're playing this balancing game, but the subject property never moves. So that's all I have to say so far for my 3 minutes of fame in this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and God bless.